Hello everybody and welcome back to part 3 of the character creation videos for Unreal Engine 4. In the previous video we left off with adding our info structure and our data table, and we set some variables on our character. I might have forgot something there, so I'm going to fix that right away. And then we're going to look at adding an aim offset, so our character points his weapon into the direction we are aiming up and down. We're going to look at adding our stamina and making it work, and we're also going to add a small HUD for it so we can see it's working. And we're going to add a spawn animation for when our character enters our level, and use an animation notify so you can make something happen on a notify from an animation. So let's get started right away. As I mentioned, I forgot something in our previous video. We're going to go to the character base blueprint, and let's open that up. And we ended up with setting the variables from our data table over here into the variables on our character, but in the sprint and the aim events we are still using the fixed values, so we're going to replace those with those variables, and then everything works like it should be. So go to the aim event, to the start aim, and for start aim you want to plug in your aim walk speed, and for the stop aim event you want to plug in your run walk speed. And next we're going to go to the sprint events, and for the start sprint you want to plug in the sprint walk speed, and for the stop sprint event again plug in your normal run walk speed. So now we are actually using the stuff we put in our data table instead of the fixed variables, fixed values, so everything works like we wanted it now. There's some small other thing I want to show you. You can simply change a mesh without using an info struct and a data table. You only use that if you want to create different versions of a character and you want to have a nice central place where you can see everything and change the variables. You don't need that if you simply want to use different skins. So let me add a little shortcut here. If I press T on my keyboard, I'm going to swap models, so I'm going to use a flip-flop node, and I'm going to change my skeletal mesh. The first time I'm going to press it, I'm going to change it to the Murdoch Magma, and the second time I'm going to change it back to the normal Murdoch. Now if I go in and I press T on my keyboard, you can see all the skins just work simply by changing the mesh. There's no need to use data tables and info structures and things like that. It's just another way of setting variables. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let me delete this and compile and save it. So now we got that working, and we're going to look at adding our aim offset. So if we're pointing our mouse up and down, the weapon stays just straight forward, and we might want to add a nice smooth aim offset to that, so our character is actually aiming his weapon where we are pointing our mouse. So let's create a new folder in here and call this aim offset. And inside there we're going to go and right click, go to animation and add an aim offset 1D. Select the skeleton, the Murdoch skeleton in my case, and name it Murdoch underscore aim offset. And let's open this. Now as you can see, this looks exactly the same as a blend space, and it also works the same as a blend space. So we can just fill in the variables we want to use on the graph and drop in the animations, and then we are going to end up with an aim offset. We're going to use the pitch variable, and we're going to use -90 to 90, so that means aiming straight down or aiming straight up, and the value of 0 is going to be aiming straight forward. We're going to use 0.1 for the interpolation time. And now if we look for the aim offset animation, so type AO, we're going to use the first three over here: aim offset center center, aim offset center down, and aim offset center up. If I just double click one of these to open it up, you can see it's a simple one frame animation where he's just pointing his gun all the way down, straight forward or all the way up, and the aim offset is going to blend between those poses and make it look nice and smooth. So we're going back to our aim offset and we're gonna drag in the animations. Aim offset center goes to pitch 0. Aim offset center down goes to -90, and aim offset center up goes to 90. And now if you change the preview over here to your idle animation, you can see it's working. If you drag around the pin, you can see he's pointing his weapon up and down. So that's all you need to do to get your aim offset working. Let's save this and close it down. And we're going to add it to our animation blueprint. So open the Murdoch Anim BP and go to your anim graph. Over here we're going to disconnect the jump locomotion like this, and we're going to drag off there and look for aim offset. Then you'll see your aim offset pop up over here, the Murdoch AO. So we're just going to select that, plug it into the final animation pose, and all we need to do now is get our pitch. So we're going to create a variable for that, make sure it's a float and call it pitch, and drop it right on top of here. And now we're going to go to our event graph and we're going to get our pitch. So we're going to start off from our pawn owner, drag off here, no, and just say get base rotation, get aim base rotation, and select that one. From there drag off and say delta rotator. For the B pin for the delta rotator, you want to plug in the get actor rotation, and we got that in the set direction step, the last one we did. So we're just dragging it right off there and plug it in the B pin. Now we're dragging off the delta rotator and we're going to break the rotator. And we can use the Y variable to plug it into our pitch. So we just hold Alt, drag in our pitch, plug the Y into our pitch, and make sure you connect the execution pin. Now let's put a comment around this and say set pitch. And we should have a working aim offset now. So let's have a look in game, compile this and play. And now if I move my mouse up and down, you can see I'm aiming my weapon up and down, and it's actually nice and smooth. Let me show you a bit better with 2 players. Let me resize this. If I click on the right screen, that is. Like so. So you can see on the client screen, you can see the server moving his weapon up and down. And if I switch it, it also works for the client. If I'm moving my mouse up and down, I'm aiming my weapon up and down. So that's nice. Just a little touch. So let's save all of this. And let's look at the next thing we're going to do. And let me get my notes here quickly. Over here. We're going to add our stamina variable and we're going to make sure it's working. So let's go to the characters folder and open our base character. And in here we're going to work from our event tick. So let's look for that. Event tick. Let's drag off here and look for the delay node. Now if you look at the description, it says calling again while it's counting down will be ignored. So this means if I put 0.1 here, for example, this will execute 10 times a second. So we're going to work off here. Let's hold B on our keyboard to create a branch and let's click. Connect this. Now we want to know if we are sprinting and if our actual speed is greater than our run walk speed. So if we are actually sprinting or not. So let's drag in is sprinting, or holding control gives us a getter. Drag off this and say end. and boolean. Next thing we need to know is our velocity, so right click and type get velocity. That gives us our vector, so drag off the vector and type vector length to turn it into a float, and that's also our speed. Now we want to know if this is greater than, so drag off our vector length, type greater than float, and drag on the run walk speed on the other pin, just like this. Connect them up to the end and connect the end to the condition, and now we know if we are sprinting or not. If we are not sprinting, we're going to regenerate our stamina, and if we are sprinting, we're going to reduce our stamina. So hold Alt to get a setter for our stamina, and hold Control to get our current stamina, and we're going to add our stamina regen rate. So hold Control and get it as well. From stamina, drag off and type float plus float. Plug in the other one, and now we need to clamp it. So type clamp and look for clamp float, and clamp it from 0 to 1 so it won't exceed those values and we're not ending up with a stamina that's way beyond what we want. So plug it into the setter, connect the execution pin, and that should work for the regeneration rate. Now we're going to do the reduction, so again we're going to get a setter for our stamina, and we're going to get our current stamina, but this time we're going to get our reduction rate. And we're going to do stamina float minus float. Again, we're going to clamp this value from 0 to 1 and just plug it into the setter as well. Connect the execution pin. And now we need to do one thing here, and that's checking if our stamina is still greater than 0. And if it's not, we want to stop sprinting. So hold B to create a branch. And get our current stamina, hold Control to get a getter, drag off this, and do is greater than, float is greater than float. No, I'm sorry, just get rid of that one, drag off stamina and do is smaller than, and float is smaller than or equal to float. And leave this to 0, so if it's smaller than or equal to 0, we're going to do stop sprint, just like this. Now we should have a working stamina variable, so let's put a comment around this. Say event tick stamina reduction and regeneration. And we don't have a HUD to see if it's working, but we can try it by simply, let's go back to one player, simply sprinting around and see if we automatically go back to running after a while, and it looks like we do, and we can sprint again if we wait a little bit, and then again it goes back to running after a little while, so it looks like it's working. But let's just add the little HUD right now so we can actually see it's working. Let's save everything. And I'm going to create a new folder again. I'm going to call this UI. Open this up, and I'm going to right click and scroll all the way down here to user interface, and I'm going to create a widget blueprint and call this player HUD and open this up. Now this is the HUD designer basically, and we're going to create a little simple HUD in here. Let me scroll down in my notes a little bit. What we might want to do first is add a health variable to our player as well, so we can use it in here. So let's minimize this for a second and go back to our characters and our character base blueprint, and let's just add a variable. Call this one health. Make sure it's a float. Now compile this and set the default value to 1. And again compile and save this, and we can close it. So now we can actually use a health variable in here. First, we're going to do is look over here on the left and look for the panel section, expand it, and you're going to look for a horizontal box and drag it right on top of the canvas panel right here. If you zoom in a little bit, you can see the horizontal box over here. Let's just pull it out of the corner a little bit, and let's increase the size so we can see a bit better what's going on. You can adjust this stuff later if you want. It's not really important. We only care about making it work right now. So the next thing we're going to do is look for a vertical box, this one, and we're going to drop it right on top of our horizontal box, and we're going to do it twice, just like this. So we have two vertical boxes inside of our horizontal box, and then we go back up here and we're going to look for the text. For the first horizontal box, we're going to drop, inside the first vertical box, we're going to drop two of those text widgets, just like this. And then for the second vertical box, we're going to drop in two progress bars. So drop them in like so. And now let's do a bit of resizing and set our text. So first select the first text block and over to the right here, set it to fill, and scroll down a little bit, set the justification to right, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to set the font size to 16, and then I'm going to set the actual text in the text block, and I'm going to type health and add a space behind it so I get a little offset. That looks okay. The next thing I'm going to do is the second text block. Again, set the size to fill. I'm going to type stamina here, like so. And I'm going to set the justification to right. And I'm going to set the font size to 16 as well. That should do it for those two. Now I'm going to select the vertical box over here and I'm going to set the size to fill. And the next thing I'm going to do is select the progress bars and set those both to fill as well, like so. And now I'm going to set the colors for the progress bars as well. So just select the first progress bar, that's the health bar. So I'm going to make it green. Like this. And for the second bar, just click your stamina bar, the fill color and opacity, click it. I'm going to make it a little bit more dark blue, like this. And that's the colors of the bars. Now we're going to make sure the bars are actually working. Let me resize this a little bit. That looks okay. And we're going to do that in the event graph, or the graph basically. Over here to the right you have the tab, just click and go to the graph and you end up with the event construct in the middle here. We're going to use this one, drag off it and say cast to character. Now we want to cast to our base character. Because we use the parent and child blueprints, this will always work no matter what character we choose, as long as it's a parent from our, as long as it's a child from our parent. So that wasn't too hard, was it? So we are going to cast to the character, but we need our character first. So right click in an empty spot and say get player character. Select that one. Now this is player index 0. That's always the person that's sitting behind the computer, so that also works in multiplayer. The only time this won't work is when you're doing a split screen setup. So for multiplayer this is fine. So plug it into the cast node, and then we're going to drag off, and as base character we're going to say promote to variable. And let's call this variable owning player. So that's the player that's owning this HUD. Now let's compile and save this, and we go back to our designer. Now it's really simple. We're just going to click on our progress bar for our help, and over here in the progress section we have percent, and we have a little bind button over here. We're going to click it. Now our owning player is in the sub menu here, and when we hover over it we see all the variables that are stored on our character. I'm sorry. So we can simply select them. So put in the health for your health bar, select the stamina bar, go to the percent, bind, owning player, and bind that one to your stamina value variable. That should be all. Let's compile and save this, close this down. Now we do need to make sure the HUD shows up in game. So we're going to add it to the viewport from our base character, open up the blueprint, and we're going to look for the event begin play, where we stored all the variables from our data table, and right after that we're going to say create widget, like this. Now in here you can simply click on the drop down menu and select the player HUD we just created. The owning player is going to be a player controller, like it says here. So right click and do get player controller. Again, player index 0, that's fine. Just plug it into the owning player and then drag off the return value and say add to viewport, like this. And now we should have our HUD working as well. So let's compile, save, and play this. And you can see there's a little HUD with 2 progress bars. If I'm walking around, standing still, or running, nothing happens. As soon as I press my shift button and I'm sprinting, my stamina depletes. And when it reaches 0, I'm going to my run speed and my stamina starts to regenerate again. And if I wait a little bit, I can sprint again. So that's cool, that's all working. Let's double check and see if it's actually working in multiplayer as well. So go for 2 players. And let me resize this once more. Like so. Check it for the server. We can sprint. Our stamina depletes. It will regenerate and we go back to our run speed. So that looks all fine. Let's try for the client as well. We can run around. We can sprint around. And we go back to running if we run out of stamina, and we start regenerating, so it looks to be all fine. So that's nice. We have a little stamina setup, and we also added a small little HUD. Let me see what we can do next. Compile and save this, get this out of the way. Let me add the little spawn animation. It's not too much work, and we can look at adding a notify for a spawn, for an animation. So we're going to do that first. Let's open our animation blueprint, and in the tab here, let's go to the animation tab. Now you can look through all the animations that belong to the skeleton. We're going to use the level start animation for this. So I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to right click on this little timeline here. And I'm going to say add notify. And over here, new notify. I'm going to give this a name. So we'll call this SpawnAnim underscore done, and that's our notify added to the animation. Oh, I misspelled it, obviously. How can I rename this? Well, okay, it should be SpawnAnim done. I'm not too concerned about it. So that's our notify. We can save and close this. And now we're in our animation graph. What we're going to do here is we're going to go to the actual anim graph and we're going to disconnect the aim offset from the final pose, like this. Let's move this over a little bit. And we're going to create a new variable first and call this play spawn animation. It's going to be a boolean, that's fine. We want to compile it and set the default value to true. Let's compile it again. Now we're going to drag off from the AimOffset node and we're going to say blend by bool, blend poses by bool, and we want to plug in the play SpawnAnim boolean into the condition right here. And we want to make sure we play our AimOffset animations when we are at the false pose, so we need to move this over, hold Control and drag it to the other pin. And for the true pose, we're going to play our level spawn animation. So level start, just drag it in like this and connect it to the true pin. Oop. We don't want to loop this, so deselect the looping and plug this into the final pose. Let's set the blend to 0.2 like this. And now all we need to do is reset the play SpawnAnim after the notify we added to our animation. We're going to do that in the event graph. Just right click on an empty spot and at the top here you see add anim notify event. You're going to expand it. Here's all the notifies that are stored on this skeleton and we're going to look for the SpawnAnim done we added. So that's this one. And then we're going to simply say set our play SpawnAnim boolean to false, just like this. Compile and save this, and let's check it out. Let's check it out single player. And you can see we're playing a spawn animation when we spawn into the level, and then we can walk and run around. So that's a nice little touch, but when we're playing our spawn animation we can also move around. So that's not too nice. Let's fix that up. And how are we going to do that? Let's minimize this and let's go to the character blueprint and open our base character. And again we're going to go to our event begin play, and right after we add our HUD widget we're going to drag off this and we're going to say disable input. So this disables our control inputs. We need a player controller for this, but we got it for creating our HUD, so just plug it in like this. And now if we enter this and play, we can't do anything while we're playing our animation. So that's nice, but when the animation's done we still can't do anything. So we need to fix that as well. Now we're going to go back to our animation blueprint where we wait for the animation notify that tells us the animation is done. After that we're going to go and try and get our pawn owner and cast to our character again. So copy those two nodes and connect them up. And as our character we're going to say enable input like this. Now all we need for this again is the player controller, so just right click and do get player controller, player index 0, that's fine, plug it in like this. And now if we compile and save this and we check it out in game, we can't do anything while the animation is playing, but as soon as it's done we get our controls back and we can start playing the game. So that's how you can use a notify, and you can play it to use it to do everything like play a fix or play a sound or have something happen. You can do a lot with it. So I think I got everything covered I needed to show in this video. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and talk to you later guys.